Let's begin with AS9, revenue recognition. A quick revision for AS9, revenue recognition. Scope, the definition of the term revenue, revenue from sale of goods, revenue from rendering of services, revenue from use by others, the resources of the enterprise. Uncertainties. Now, the way we learned AS7, exclusively a standard for recognizing revenue for persons who are engaged in the business of construction. Similarly, we also have a standard with respect to recognizing revenue from sale of goods, rendering of services, and use by others, the resources of the enterprise. Now let's understand the scope. I'll just write down the scope here itself so it becomes easier. This standard does not apply to, number one, construction contracts, means revenue from construction contracts. Then revenue from hire purchase and lease rentals. Yeah, for this we had AS7. For this we have AS19. The third, government grants. Revenue from government grants. This we have already learned under AS12. And the last, revenue of insurance company arising from insurance contract. Of course, this is governed by the IRDA, so the standard does not take into account. Many things are not taken by the standard because of something in the definition also of the revenue is there. Yeah, so construction contract, hire purchase, government grants, revenue of insurance company. These are all the areas which are not covered by AS9. So now I move on to definition. What is revenue? So the standard says revenue is gross inflow of cash, receivable, or other consideration arising mainly from sale of goods, rendering of services, used by others, the resources of the enterprise. Now, gross inflow, something should come in, is inflow. It means restriction of an outflow is not revenue. So if I'm going to get some discounts, if I'm going to get some rebates on my payments, that is not revenue because there is no inflow. There should be some inflow either of cash, receivable, or other consideration. It can be anything. Arising mainly from only this thing, sale of goods, rendering of services, and used by others, the resources of the enterprise. So natural increase in herds, agriculture produce will not be revenue because we are talking only with respect to sale of goods. I had 100 kettles, now they are 200. That is not covered by AS9 because it is only sale of goods, rendering of services, and used by others, the resource of the enterprise. Now, when should you recognize revenue from sale of goods? Very important. These conditions are fulfilled, then only you should recognize revenue from sale of goods. When the risk and reward incidental to ownership of the goods has been transferred. Of course, underlying ownership should be transferred, but along with that, the risk and reward which are incidental to the ownership should also be transferred. The seller has no effective control over the goods. There is no uncertainty as to measurability and there is no uncertainty as to collectibility. If all these four conditions are fulfilled, then only we should recognize revenue from sale of goods. Otherwise, we should not recognize revenue from sale of goods. Like goods are sold on approval basis. So the possession has gone. We are not looking at the possession. What we are looking at is also risk and reward should go. It may have happened that the invoice has been generated, but the risk and rewards are still not transferred. So we'll always look at the substance at the time of identifying whether the revenue should be recognized or not. Risk and reward should be transferred. You shouldn't have effective, you in the sense seller should not have effective control. And the amount of revenue should be measurable. You cannot write ad hoc amount. It should be measurable reliably. Reliably you should be in a position to measure it. And the last, there is no uncertainty as to collectibility. I am selling goods, but if there is an uncertainty with respect to the payment, then don't recognize revenue. So this is nothing but recognition of revenue from sale of goods. Then comes recognition of revenue from rendering of services. The first condition, performance is accomplished. Of course, no uncertainty as to measurability. No uncertainty as to collectibility. Three things. Some performance, underlying event of performance should have happened. When you are rendering services, some event of performance should have happened. Then only recognition of revenue will rise. Second, of course, these are repetitive stuff. No uncertainty as to measurability. You are able to measure the amount of services rendered and recognize revenue. And the last, there is no uncertainty as to collectibility. Means if I recognize revenue, I will be certain that I will be able to receive the payment. No uncertainty as to collectibility. So performance is accomplished. Some performance, just I have sold tickets for an event. There is an event of particular singer which is going to happen. So I sold the tickets today. The event is going to happen after 15 days. It is non-refundable ticket. Should I recognize the revenue? Answer is no. Why? Because the performance, the act of performance should commence. Then only you can recognize the revenue. But here the standard talks about two methods of recognizing revenue. It says proportionate completed method, or I'll use the better word, completed service method, CSM, and PCM. Proportionate completion method. Now what basically it means? Completed service method. You should recognize revenue only when the services are completed. And when I say proportionate completion method, you should recognize revenue on proportionate basis, completion basis, proportionate completion basis. When should you go with completed service method? When the act of services are rendered in the single act, or services are rendered in a single act. There is only one act of services. So we'll say completed service method. When services are rendered in multiple act, there will be multiple acts, like JKC, when you take an admission for 11th, 12th and CA foundation. So what is happening is, we are going to give you multiple act of services. First 11th standard, thereafter 12th standard, and then CA foundation or CS foundation, as the case may be. So multiple act of service. Of course, that act has to be significant act. Like if I'm going to teach you accounting standard AS 9, I say I completed first part, that is nothing but revenue from sales of goods. So first act is over. That is not a significant act. A significant act of services has to be considered. Yeah. So if a person comes to render services, he is doing some installation. He will do installation of one of the machine and then say one act is over, I will recognize revenue. It doesn't work. A significant act of service only will be considered as an act. So when services are rendered in a single act, when services are rendered in a single act, we go with completed service method. When services are rendered in multiple act, we go with proportionate completion method. Now moving on to the areas which we were discussing. We completed scope. 4 areas where the standard is not applicable. Definition: revenue is gross inflow of cash, receivables or other consideration, mainly from 3 things: goods, services and use by others, the resource of the enterprise. There's 4 conditions, 3 conditions. Now, revenue from use by others, the resource of the enterprise. Somebody else is using my resources. Here we have 3 things: interest, royalties and dividends. Royalties can be on production or it can be on sales. Same way dividend can be a final dividend or it can be an interim dividend. Now, as far as this is concerned, it is obviously based on accrual basis. Always based on accrual basis. But for dividend, the standard says dividends are to be recognized as in revenue when the right to receive dividend is established. When the right to receive dividend is established, then only you should recognize revenue. Nothing like accrual and something like that. It's only when the right to receive dividend is established. Of course, in case of final dividend, when it is declared, your right gets established. And in case of interim dividend, when it is actually received, because interim dividend is proposed, paid, and then it is not declared. You cannot have declared, but it is ratified. It is first proposed, paid, and then it is ratified in the AGM. But for final dividend, it is proposed, declared in the AGM, and then it is paid. So when it is declared. Royalties on production and royalties on sales, both are on accrual basis, as in when that royalty becomes receivables, as in when it accrues. Same way interest, time proportionate basis. So whatever time is over, you should recognize that much interest. Yeah. One point with respect to revenue is that if there are some exchange restrictions, like I have sold goods out of India, or I'm rendering services out of India, or a royalty is receivable from somebody who is out of India, but there are some exchange restrictions which are applicable in that company, like China doesn't allow repatriation. So there is exchange restrictions. Whatever I earn, I have to just accumulate it there. After 10 years or 5 years, I'll be able to bring it back to our country. In that case, no revenue is recognized till these exchange restrictions are not withdrawn. So if there is any kind of exchange restrictions, revenue recognition is postponed. Coming on to the last area, if you remember, these are the points, I'm sorry, we are discussing. The last area is uncertainties. Yeah. Now what is uncertainty? Uncertainties with respect to payment. Collectibility, I can say. Payment, that is nothing but with respect to collectibility. Now, the standard says there can be an uncertainty with respect to collectibility at the time of recognizing revenue or after revenue has already been recognized. Very simple. When I'm going in the process of recognizing revenue, at that point of time only there is an uncertainty. At the time of recognizing revenue, there is an uncertainty. Then what is to be done? Very simple. You have an uncertainty at the time of recognizing revenue. Simple. Don't recognize revenue. Postpone. Till uncertainty exists. But after revenue has already been recognized, of course, don't reverse it off. Don't reverse revenue already recognized. Sorry. Don't reverse revenue already recognized, but create provision. What we should do is create provision for it. Yeah, so this is the end of the question, end of our part of theory discussion. Let's move to questions and answers on AS9. Let's discuss each of them where required. I would be giving more explanations and doing it for you. Arjun sold farm equipments through its dealers. One of the conditions at the time of sale is payment of consideration in 14 days. And in an event of delay, the interest is charged at 15% per annum. the company has not realized interest from the dealers in the past. However, for the year ended on 31st March 15, it wants to recognize interest due on the balance due from dealers. The amount ascertained is 9 lakhs. Decide whether income by way of interest from dealers is eligible for recognition as per AS 9. Of course, it is your income, but there is an uncertainty with respect to collectability. You have been selling goods. If your dealer defaults in paying it on right time, the contract or the terms of your sale says we will charge you interest. But normally in commercial way, we are not charging them interest. Now the accountant says that we should recognize the revenue. But obvious, what is going to happen is those dealers will not pay us interest. So there is an uncertainty with respect to collectability, and hence no revenue should be recognized for this interest. Interest will be recognized only on receipt basis. So this is a theoretical way. This is the answer. The interest income hence is not to be recognized. I move on to the next question. The board of directors of X Limited have decided on 31st March 2015 to increase the sale price of certain items of goods sold retrospectively from 1st Jan 2015. As a result of this decision, the company has to receive 5 lakhs from its customer in respect of sales made from 1/1/15 to 31st March 15, but the company's accountant was reluctant to make up his mind. You are asked to offer your suggestion. Okay. So you have to receive 5 lakhs from the customer for the sales which are made in the past. The company accountant was reluctant to make up his mind. He says, I am not going to recognize it. Is he correct? Yes, of course. Because the same answer, there is an uncertainty with respect to collectibility. You may raise a claim retrospectively. Would your customers agree to any kind of retrospective amendment? Of course, no. So, they are asking our suggestion. We should say, yes, you should recognize revenue only when ultimate collection will materialize and not now, because there is an uncertainty as to collectibility. So, revenue recognition should be postponed. There is uncertainty. We move to the next question then. A Limited entered into a contract with B Limited to dispatch goods valuing 25,000 every month for 4 months upon receipt of entire payment. B Limited accordingly made a payment of 1 lakh and A Limited started dispatching the goods. In the 3rd month, due to a natural calamity, B Limited requested A Limited not to dispatch goods until further notice. Though A Limited is holding the remaining goods worth rupees 50,000 ready for dispatch. A Limited accounted rupees 50,000 as sales and transferred the balance to advance received against sales. Comment upon the treatment of balance amount with reference to provision of AS 9. Now, this is with respect to sale of goods. When should you recognize revenue from sale of goods? It should be recognized when those conditions are fulfilled. The risk and reward incidental to the ownership of the asset has been transferred. The seller has no effective control. The measurability is not uncertain, and of course there is no uncertainty as to collectibility. But if the goods are not delivered at the buyer's request, or the delivery is delayed at the buyer's request, then but obvious the risk and rewards have been transferred to the buyer and we should recognize the sale. Now if you look properly, we have to sell goods of rupees 1 lakh in 4 installments. 2 installments are already over. 2 deliveries have already been made, so that 50,000 is 100% your sales. The question arises with respect to the 3rd month. In the 3rd month, due to natural calamity, B is requesting A not to dispatch goods until further notice. Though A is holding remaining goods worth 50,000 ready to dispatch. A says ready. but it is B who says don't dispatch. So can I say the delivery of the goods is delayed at the buyer's request, and if the delivery of the goods is delayed at the buyer request, I should recognize revenue because the risk and rewards have been transferred. Yeah. So the accountant has credited to advance against sales, which is not correct. It is incorrect. And there's nothing but the conditions which we should have it. The main answer is here. Coming on to the next question. Sarita Publication publishes monthly magazine on 15th of every month. It sells advertising space in the magazine to the advertisers on the terms of 80% sales value payable in advance and balance within 30 days of the release of publication. The sale of the space in March 2014 issue was made in February 2014. The magazine was published on the scheduled date. It received 2,40,000 on 10/3 and 60,000 on 10/4 of March 14 issue. Discuss in the context of AS9 the amount of revenue to be recognized and the treatment of the amount received from advertisers for the year ending on 31st March 14. What will be the treatment if the publication is delayed by 2/4/2014? Now, this is with respect to rendering of services only. Yeah, your publication is nothing but on that advertising space is sold. So advertisers will come and say some advertisements have to be put in this space, that magazine space I have given for advertisement. Now, as per AS9, revenue from sale of advertisement space is to be recognized only when the advertisement appears, not when the booking amount is received. You may give me money today. Okay, sir, my advertisement should appear on this 26th. Agreed. On 26th March. Today I am on 20th of February. I have got booking for 26th March. So even though I would have received full value, then also I will recognize the revenue only when the publication is published and your advertisement has appeared. If you look properly, publishes magazines on 15th of every month. It sells advertising space to magazines to advertisers on terms 80% अभी देने का, बाकी का 30 days के बाद देने का, publication release होने का 30 days के बाद. The sales space for March was made in February. The magazine was published on the scheduled date. It received 2,40,000 on 10/3 and 60,000 on 10/4. So, but obvious, the whole amount 240 plus 60,000 will be recognized as a revenue on 15th of March. Will be recognized as a revenue on 15th of March, provided there is no uncertainty with respect to the 60,000. If 60,000 मिलने में कोई क्वेश्चन मार्क है, अनसर्टनिटी है, तो उसको रिकॉग्नाइज नहीं करने का. The reason, I may get 60,000 after 30 days of publication, so there may be an uncertainty. But if uncertainty is not there, I will recognize 240 because it's 240 in any case has been received plus 60,000. Okay, so on 31st March 2014, I will be recognizing revenue of 3 lakhs. What will be the treatment if the publication is delayed till 2/4? If it gets delayed, so in 31st March 2014, no revenue will be recognized. Even though I would have received 2,40,000, no revenue will be recognized. 2,40,000 will be considered as an advance. This is our answer. Three lakhs will be recognized as an income for March 14. But if it's delayed, then no revenue will be recognized and 2,40,000 will be considered as an advance. We move to the next question then. Given the following information of Messrs. Paper Products Limited, Goods of 60,000 were sold on 20th March, but at the request of the buyer, this were delivered on 10th April. Can I say revenue will be recognized on 20th March only? On 15/1/2015, goods of 150 were sent on consignment basis, of which 20% of goods are unsold, lying with the consignee as on 31st March 15. So we'll be recognizing revenue only with respect to 1,50,000 into 80%. So in respect of consignment, the revenue is to be recognized when the consignee sells it to the outside parties. 1,20,000 worth of goods sold on approval basis on 1/12/2014. The period of approval is 3 months. So it is December, January and February, after which they are considered as sold. Buyer sent approval for 75% of the goods on 31st March. No approval or disapproval received for remaining up to 31st March. Can I say the whole amount has been approved? Because the normal approval period has expired. Sorry. The fourth point. Apart from the above, the company has made a cash sales of 780. Trade discount of 5% was allowed on cash sales. So can I say 780 minus 5% is nothing but the amount of revenue to be recognized. What is the amount of revenue to be recognized? Let's work out for each of them. The sale is complete, delivery is postponed, so should recognize the entire sale of 60,000. Second, goods are lying with the customer. How much goods are lying? 20%. So 80% should be recognized as in revenue. So 80% should be recognized as in revenue. Case 2. Case 3. Goods are given on approval basis. If goods are given on approval basis, period of approval has already expired. If period of approval has already expired, can I say we should recognize the revenue for the full amount? Pura 1,20,000. Cash sales ka trade discounts given should be deducted from determining revenue. Thus 39,000 should be deducted. So your total revenue is 741 for this, and the total is 1041. Yeah. So we go to next question, but before that we have already completed AS9 including its problems. Thank you.